Good evening, everyone. We are in full attendance, and the hour of 7 p.m. having arrived and passed, I want to say good evening and welcome to the monthly meeting of the Arlington Board of Zoning Appeals, which is also known as the BZA. My name is Charles Smith, and I'm the chairman of the board. The board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. In addition to myself, we have Judy Freshman, to my right, Vice Chair Inta Malice, to my far right, Paul Melnick, and to my far left, Peter Owen. Also present is the professional staff, including Stephen Rissy, the coordinator of the BZA, to my extreme far left, and Blake Bowen to my far right, and who is the assistant to the zoning administrator. I'm looking around the room for any other staff, and I don't see any right now. Thanks for being here, and we want to extend a warm welcome to everyone who's come. But to avoid disruptions, I'd ask that you please turn your cell phones off or put them in a silent mode. Now, on the front table, there are reports for each of the cases that are on tonight's docket. There's one copy of the report. If you've not seen that report, I'd suggest that you take a look at it for your case and then return it back to the table so that others might have an opportunity to take a look at it too if they're interested. This board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set out in further detail in the county's zoning ordinance, which is adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations that are set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests solely with the county board. This board, though, does have the authority to do 3 things. We can approve use permits that allow modifications of placement requirements for structures on 1- and 2-family lots where there's no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. 2, we can grant variances from specific requirements of the zoning ordinance. And 3, we can decide appeals of decisions of the zoning administrator. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary in the public interest, including limiting the duration of the use permit. In order to approve a use permit, the law requires that the board find that the proposal meet conditions and that the use permit will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning related policies of the county. To do this, the Board of Zoning Appeals shall consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of development with the surrounding neighborhood, because the structure's overall footprint, size, and placement are similar to the structures on the property surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform and historical features and or significant trees and foliage. When granting variances, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that it meets the following criteria. The strict application of the terms of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, or granting the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or improvements thereon, or alleviate a hardship by granting a reasonable modification to a property or improvements thereon requested by or on behalf of a person with a disability, and the property for which the variance is being requested was acquired in good faith and any hardship was not created by the applicant, that the variance granted will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property and nearby properties in the proximity of the geographic area, and that the condition or situation of the property concerned is not of so general or recurring a nature as to make reasonably practicable the adoption of an amendment to the ordinance, that granting the variance will not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on the property or change the zoning classification of the property, and that the relief or remedy obtained through the variance is not available through a special exception process as provided for under the zoning and or subdivision ordinance. When deciding appeals, the zoning administrator, the board must use its judgment to determine if the administrator was correct. This evening, cases will be called and a brief staff report and recommendation will be given. Following that, board members will ask any questions of the staff which we may have. Next, applicants or their representative will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. If they choose to make a comment, they must come forward to the podium so their comments can be recorded for the record. Next, all speakers for the item will be called. Speakers must fill out a speaker slip, which are in this little box to the right of on the dais up here, and pass them up through the clerk. After we hear from speakers for and against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The board may ask questions of any speakers, but does not permit and will not condone any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. We've deemed the following time limits for speakers to be sufficient: 20 minutes for appellants and appeals cases, and 5 minutes for applicants for use permits and variances. In all cases, speakers representing organizations shall have 3 minutes and individuals 2 minutes. After the board has gathered all the information we need and discussed the case, we will decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you're welcome to stay for the remainder of the session, or you can leave at your convenience. And again, thank you for being here, and I'd ask Mr. Rissy to please call the first case.
Case number V-11394-18-UP1 as a use permit request by Sarah Sunday, the owner, to permit a setback of 11 feet to the porch, 10.5 feet to the porch eave instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eave is required. A setback of 5.5 feet to new window well instead of 21 feet is required, and a setback of 5 feet to the wall, 5 feet to the eave of the addition instead of 25 feet to the wall, 21 feet to the eave as required from the First Street North right-of-way, and to permit the aggregate setback of 11 feet instead of 18 feet is required in the R6 zoning district regarding a new side 2-story addition with basement, a front porch, and window wells adjacent to the First Street North right-of-way on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district, premise known as 101 North Highland Street. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the use permit request. 2 alternative proposed resolutions have been provided should the board see fit to approve the request as advertised or with an 8.6-foot setback.
Thank you, Mr. Rissy. Any questions of staff? Mr. Owen.
At the last meeting, I asked a question. There's currently a fence around a green space just to the south of the applicant's existing house. And does this fence currently enclose a portion of the public right-of-way? And I believe the answer to that was yes.
Yes.
Does the fencing require any kind of permit or other permission from the county?
Fencing generally does require a permit from the county, yes.
And is there such a permit for this fence?
I have not found a permit for this fence.
If we grant this use permit, does that affect the fence in any way? To permit the fence where it would otherwise not be permitted?
No, the fence is not a requested part of this application.
Okay. And I asked this question as well, but I can't remember the answer. Does the applicant's proposed addition maximize the available setbacks to the rear of the existing dwelling?
Very nearly so because of the separation requirement to the existing garage.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? The applicant's representative, I presume, would be our first speaker, Sarah Riddle-Moser. Sarah Riddle from Moser Architects and Associates.
Good evening, members of the board.
Welcome.
I'm here to answer questions about the design and the addition size overall. I do want to plead on my client's behalf about the lot size. As staff mentioned, it's zoned in an R6 district and is actually under 5,000 square feet. Many of the examples listed are above 6,000 square foot lots. And one example in particular, which I believe was a granted use permit, is a project on North Cleveland Street that was given a 2.8-foot setback to a right-of-way. And staff deemed it as not a good comparison. But the lot size on this property is 7,000 square feet, and we just, would like that to be taken into consideration, that something granted by the BZA should be a comparison, especially when a right-of-way is a similar situation, and it's a setback quite a bit smaller than what we're asking for.
First, Ms. Malice, then Mr. Owen.
Did you have an opportunity to look at the staff report?
Yes.
Staff has a recommendation
Yes, that's correct.
Sorry, I'm sorry. What is your view on that recommendation?
Well, I think given the lot size and the existing house size, my clients are looking for just quite a bit more space. We're happy with the suggestion of an 8.6, but we are looking for the slightly larger size for a master suite and the family room that they're looking for the house.
Mr. Chair? Me?
I'm sorry. I didn't see Mr. Melnick.
I defer to Mr. Milner.
Mr. Owen.
Okay. So I appreciated you, your diligence in putting the plans also for the 8.6. That was greatly appreciated, because when we see the stat, the first question is, well, what would it do and what would it look like? So, so that I appreciate your thoroughness on that. And I'm personally persuaded by, the staff's presentation and their report, because I think it, we do have to look at compatibility. We have to look at the tables in the surrounding neighborhood, and it looks reasonable, the plans that you put together. So, I understand, the want for more room. I am persuaded by the staff report on this one.
Mr. Owen.
Thank you. So this is an unusual site also because there's a street right-of-way that's the measurement, but the actual curb of the street is very far away. And indeed, part of the street has a gigantic tree in it, and there's what appears to be a privately fenced-in yard in the middle of the street. And I'm wondering, has this parcel requested that the county abandon the street or vacate the street? I mean, it's a little weird to me that there's this county right-of-way that's being used as private land. Often, there's a step under Virginia law to address that kind of situation, which is to go to the government and say, you're not using this land for public right-of-way, please abandon it, and then it reverts to private property. So is that an avenue that your client has pursued?
No, and I'd imagine they are here. You want them to answer this question, but I'm sure the daunting task of that may put them off, right? I mean, I think we just don't feel that the request is too much, even with the right-of-way as part of their challenge. So,
because 20 feet would be which is I guess in the staff report, to the curb is much more generous and in keeping, right? And so we're dealing with a situation where the street could be. I mean, the county would have the right tomorrow to bulldoze that tree in half that yard and build the house potentially, as you're proposing, 5.5 feet away from the entire wall of the south wall of the house. So that's part of my concern, is that, what's the situation we're really dealing with? Are we dealing with a situation where the county may my understanding is that that's a two-way street right now. It's less than 15 feet wide, but it's two-way.
It's not marked.
Yeah, it's not marked one way.
no.
So it is. So you can traverse it either way.
I mean, when I was traveling to visit this weekend, I went on my car and there was a car waiting at the intersection to pull past me
To get past you?
to go the exact opposite direction.
Yeah.
So, so that's also unusual. And so I don't know what our responsibility is as a Board of Zoning Appeals. Should we be operating in an environment where we're expecting that tree in that yard will stay? Or should we be operating in an environment where we have to pretend in our minds that there's really a street there? And the way to get out of that, there actually is a mechanism to get out of that, which is to request a vacation and just go ahead and officially convert it to private property.
Versus doing a lot of work in the county, versus, I get handed a survey, property lines are deemed. I essentially put a scale down to these plats to guess where current curb line is, right, current street. So I'm following the same rules you are, really, where property lines are marked, and I'm coming to you in a way that's saying we think 5.5 in that neighborhood is fair no matter what property adjacencies they have, right, whether it's a right-of-way, a street curb, sidewalk. So I still sort of do believe in this instance with a lot size this small that the 5.5 isn't too much to ask.
Okay. The other thing I want to say, I want to follow up on Mr. Melnick's comment about the preparation. At the last hearing, there was a interest expressed in having more information about the tree health and the tree canopy, and that was provided for this hearing, and I think that was really helpful and a very good demonstration of good faith and participation in the process, and I just want to acknowledge that no doubt took some effort to do, and I think it's really appreciated and helpful. I guess since Mr. Melnick stated some views of his own, I am not in support of this application or even the staff recommendation. The criteria that we're supposed to evaluate is the overall footprint, side, and placement similar to the structures on the property surrounding the subject property, and when the property next door at 11.7 feet away from the right-of-way is already one of the closest in the entire Lyon Park neighborhood. To me, that's next door. That's a surrounding property. And even that one is way, way, way closer than many or most other properties in that immediate vicinity, and indeed in the entire neighborhood. And to be going half a mile or farther away from this house to find an example here, an example there that's 2 feet or 5 feet with anomalous circumstances, I just don't think that those qualify as, and this is not directed at you, this is more just for the record, I don't think that those are structures surrounding the subject property. And just for your information, the one that was 2 feet was because it was started out at 0 feet, and as a trade, they went back 2 feet to allow them to go up. And I'm very, very concerned about the argument that because we did that suddenly every single house in all of Lyon Park is entitled to be 2 feet away from the street. I just don't think that that's a good way of evaluating. And again, that's not for your response. That's just, stating my concerns for the record. I think that this would be a very easy case if it were 11.7. Match the neighbor, to me, that's a slam dunk. But
Sorry, the neighbor's lot size, right? There's still the undersized lot situation that does make this property different.
Yep.
I also do think that there should be some way to compare corner lots versus interior lots, right? Because I think property line adjacencies should be, corners are different, corners are more difficult. So it's three things here, I think. It's the right-of-way, it's the corner, and it's the lot size.
Right, but on the other side, there's also whether or not this is a wall or I don't know what the right architectural term is, but the next door neighbor that has the 11.7, that's not for the entire wall either. That's for something like an enclosed porch. It's not the whole south side of the house. So even staff's proposal at 8.6 is taking what is the second most extreme example in the entire Lyon Park neighborhood that they can find, and then saying, yeah, and you can make the whole wall that way. And I totally appreciate that this is also one of the smaller lots in the neighborhood. That's true, and I think that that's, part of the mix in terms of will this look out of place in the neighborhood, on a smaller lot. Maybe it wouldn't look less out of place, so I think that's a valid factor to consider. But I just don't think that the right way to evaluate this is to look for the most extreme thing in the entire, and the Lyon Park neighborhood is huge, It's like a mile by half a mile. There's hundreds of homes in there. And I feel like saying we're going to evaluate this by lowest common denominator, especially here where you have this very anomalous condition where it's difficult to know what the county's intentions are. If the county has not abandoned the street, will they eventually feel like I've heard, for example, that fire trucks need 20 feet to be able to pass each other for it to be a safe street, and this is definitely not 20 feet wide as it stands. So I feel like the ducks are not in a row for an 8.6 separation. I'll have to vote no if that's what the motion is.
Thank you very much, Mr. Owen. Any further questions of the applicant's representative? I do have a speaker slip, though it's not necessary, from the owner, Ms. Sunday, if she wants to address the board, she may.
Good evening, members of the board. Thank you for your time. For the members that weren't here when we appeared 2 months ago, I just wanted to give a little bit of a personal explanation of why this use permit's important to us. But before I do that, Mr. Owen, I recognize you don't support us, and that's fine. But you did reference our neighbors behind us on, they're at 102 Garfield. They're also subject to the same constraints along First Street. I think it's important to be aware that their lot size is almost twice as big as ours, 9,000 square feet. They have plenty of room to go back. We do not. We only have room to go out to the side. So that's why we're asking for what we're asking for. So I just wanted to share with the members that I didn't appear before 2 months ago that I relocated to the area with Nestle when Nestle moved its corporate headquarters to Roslyn, summer of 2017. And when I chose a house, I was choosing a house for my family to be. My husband, now husband, and his children had not moved up yet. And so I think my excitement to get settled and get a great house in a great neighborhood perhaps clouded my ability to see, some of the constraints of this really great house. And so it wasn't until my now husband and his kids moved up that we sort of started to see, okay, we're going to have some space issues here. For example, we only have 2 bedrooms on the second floor. We only have 1 bathroom. Our living room, kitchen, dining area, as you're familiar with these houses, is incredibly small. So we started to see that we really needed to see what we could do in terms of an addition. And so when we started looking into that, we also started to realize we had some constraints with our lot size, just it being incredibly small, and then all of the other issues that we've talked about here coming to bear and requiring a use permit. The bottom line for us is we love this neighborhood. We love our house. We want to add on to it in a way that's respectful to the character of the neighborhood, but that also modernizes the house and adds value to the neighborhood. We don't want to do anything that is going to be a problem for our neighbors or for the county. But we do request this use permit, and we feel that it's in line with other permits that the board has granted recently. I don't think we need to use the 2-foot 8-inch example as an extreme. There are others. For example, as Mr. Reese noted in his report, 600 North Ivy, even if it is a half mile away, it's still very close to our house. Lot size is about 30% bigger than ours, 6,500 or so square feet. They have a 6.5 setback from the side street. So I think there are other kind of reasonable examples that are still relatively close to us that demonstrate the challenges that we face with our less than 5,000 square foot lot when use permits have been granted for closer distances than the staff recommendation on much larger lot sizes. So with that, I'll thank you for your time, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much. I'd note that I think that even the size of the rooms in the alternative are small that were proposed in trying to accomplish an increase in space. I think you did an excellent job in doing that and even maintaining really small spaces. Any questions of the applicant? Be happy to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Melnick.
so I would like to, in case V1139418 UP1, I'd like to move that the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the, hold on, let me turn to it. I'd like to move that we adopt the alternative proposed resolution approval at 8.6 feet.
That's proposed resolution 2 on page 7.
Exactly.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adopt the alternative proposed resolution 2. Discussion. Mr.
Yes,
Owen.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to reiterate or clarify that I definitely would vote yes if this were 3 feet more, but at the current level, I can't. And the other thing, I just want to reiterate my thanks to the applicants because, they had to take 2 rounds to get the full board, and they submitted extra material when they were asked, and I think they were very well prepared throughout. And so there's a lot of work to get to this point. I just want to acknowledge that was a lot of work on their part.
Thank you very much. I agree.
Mr.
Any
Chairman.
further discussion? Ms. Melnick. I'm sorry, Ms. Malice.
I would like to just reiterate Mr. Owen's comments about vacating that land right now and pursuing it regardless of how this motion comes out, because I think the fact that, it's fenced in and it's on county property at this time is problematic. Staff has reassured us that that doesn't affect our ruling tonight one way or the other doesn't affect that, but it seems like that's a housekeeping item that it would be worth your while to take care of, so that you know where you stand down the road.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of granting the alternative proposed motion 2, signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed?
No.
And by a 4-1 vote, the motion is granted. Thank you very much. Mr. Rissy, please call the next case.
Case number V-11409-18-UP-1 is a use permit request by Zolt Makskalski, the owner, to permit a rear setback of 18 feet to a new deck instead of 21 feet as required from the rear property line regarding a new deck in the R6 zoning district premise known as 909 North Emerson Street. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you very much. Any questions of staff?
Chairman?
Mr. Owen.
Did we get any additional neighbor comment since the last time this was heard?
I believe the applicant may have brought some with him.
All right, well, we'll see.
Good. Let's then hear from Zolt Maksaki. Help us.
Thomas Delatorre.
The agent.
Oh, you're the agent.
I'm the
Okay.
agent. Yeah.
Fill out a speaker slip for me. And,
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you for having me here today.
Your
Thomas Delatorre, the agent, the contractor.
your address,
My personal address or the,
business. It doesn't.
44170 Wade Drive, Chantilly, Virginia.
You can address that question with respect to neighbor comments.
Sorry. Yeah, I spoke to the direct neighbors, and I got 2 out of 3 of them. One of them just didn't respond, but the direct neighbors, both of them said that they have no problem with them extending the deck.
Mr. Chairman, could we get the names and addresses of those?
Yes.
neighbors?
Oh,
Yeah.
You can provide those. We'd be happy to.
Do you mind
put
just
those in the
reading them
record.
into the record?
All right. The neighbor directly to the left said the deck size is acceptable to us as a direct neighbor.
Your address.
The address is 5126 10th Street. And the neighbor that goes directly behind on 10th Street, that the deck will actually be facing their house, says the deck size is acceptable.
That address also.
5120 10th Street.
Okay.
Deck size is acceptable as direct neighbors as well.
Okay, and you can put that in that document. We'll take into the record. Any further questions of the applicant's representative? And fill out a speaker slip too. Any further questions? Hearing none, I'd be happy to.
Mr. Chairman?
Motion, Mr. Owen.
Mr. Chairman, in case V-11409-18-UP-1, I move that we adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit with conditions.
Thank you. It's been moved by Mr. Owen and seconded by Ms. Malice to grant the subject use permit. All those in favor, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it and the matter's granted. Thank you very much. Please call the next case.
Case number V-11410-18-UP-3 is a use permit request by Jeffrey and Mary Bronger, the owners, to permit a setback of 5.8 feet to the wall instead of 8 feet as required from the west side property line regarding a second-story addition over a previously BZA approved one-story left side addition in the R6 zoning district, premise known as 2633 North Quantico. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached resolution granting the subject use permit with conditions.
Thank you very much. Any questions of staff?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Owen.
I was confused about whether or not we had received feedback from the left side neighbor at 2637 Quantico Street.
We have not. There was an error in the staff report.
Right here.
They can speak to it, but in short, it was based on an email I had with the applicant stating his left neighbor was in support and the right was not, but I was not looking at the property lines, so.
neighbor is here present? Is that?
The neighbor sharing the left property line is here present and will give his
All right, well, then
opinions on
I'll
the matter.
look forward to seeing what happens.
Ms. Malice. You're okay. Oh.
Our previous action allowed a addition with the condition that it not be built over.
Correct.
If we had not added that condition, could it have been built over by right?
I'm going to say most likely yes, as it would have been a non-conforming condition at that point. There is an allowance for single-family homeowners in this zoning district to build over the walls that are non-conforming, so long as they do nothing to further that encroachment.
So we would have created a non-conforming situation, and then they could have taken advantage of the non-conforming rules.
I believe that would be correct, yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Any questions of staff with respect to this application? Jeffrey
Longer,
Bronger?
like stronger.
Like stronger. Bronger, like stronger. Thank you. Welcome.
And slogan maybe some. But,
Sure. Welcome, and thank you very much.
well, thanks for having me, and thanks, Mr. Reese, for working on the package. So I think Miss Sunday, it's too bad she left. She could have said a lot of what I would say, but just to start as far as, you know, the neighborhood and like the charm of the beauty of these homes. You know, this is being from the Midwest. This is kind of my dream style of house. So everything I've done is tried to keep it within conforming of the house and the neighborhood, and it's kind of in contrast to a lot of the new big McMansions that are being put up and towering over the smaller houses in the neighborhood. But anyway, the purpose of the room was for the children, despite being old. My wife and I had kids, had twins 4 years ago, so we're kind of, you know, been trying to add space, you know, for them, and feel that it'd be helpful to have another room upstairs for the children. And just looking at what we want to do, it fits within the existing footprint of what we already have. And one of the conditions was, when the first level was put on, was that, you know, privacy bushes or things like that be put up to kind of help make it not so, you know, so seeable for the neighbors. And so some of that is up to try and block that. But putting another room on top of that, again, it would stay within the existing footprint, but it would just be expanding on the roof line. And I know one of the concerns they have is sunlight, and I've kind of, you know, I really examined that to see, you know, how much it might adversely affect them. I don't think it adversely affects the neighborhood. I don't really feel it adversely affects them, but taking that into consideration, you know, when I kind of charted the sun and everything, it appears that the sun, morning sun, up until like 1 o'clock or so, still comes into their kitchen window because of the angle of our houses. When they're on the corner at one angle and we're kind of straight on, and so as the sun comes, it still hits that part. It may be part of the afternoon that it could be cut off a bit, but then might be back by later afternoon. But I don't think and it may be that it doesn't go up far enough that it might just block the sun from being at the lower level and not the higher level. So I knew that was something they were concerned about, and I looked at. And as far as the, I think I may have covered it all here. The other thing is, you know, I went to talk to the neighbors and got multiple letters of support. Including all of the neighbors sharing a property line, with the exception of my neighbors here, who we consider, I think, each other good friends despite this issue. Again, as I was saying, you see in this picture here, we just bring it out to where it already is, and where the sun actually comes and starts in the morning is through the broken open area, and as the day passes, the sun by 2 o'clock comes over to that side of the house. But yeah, anyway, so I think that's all I have to say.
Any questions of Mr. Bronger? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Owen?
What is the current, do you happen to know the current square footage of the whole house?
It's somewhere around 2000. It started as a salt box colonial under 2000, and then like the room on the front, the back, that it might have put it at somewhere around 2000. I don't know if they know, but it's pretty close to that area now.
Thank you.
Definitely not over 22 or 3 or 4, I don't think. Right?
Thank you. Steve and/or Caroline Spurry of 2637 North Quantico. Welcome.
Thank you.
You don't want time for each. You're going to divide your time equally, or as you deem appropriate.
I'm not sure. He mentioned it. I guess what is 5 minutes?
5 minutes total. We can tag team.
Total?
We can tag team.
No matter who goes first, you can tag team.
Okay.
We'll tag team.
Okay.
Just to confirm, 2637 is the left house. You look at it this way.
Yes, that is our house is the one on the corner. And thank you for considering us. This is a first time. And I would agree with Jeff that, I mean, we all get along, and we, generally speaking, are in favor of additions as opposed to houses being torn down and these McMansions being built. And as you know, this is the second application for a setback exception next to our house, and we did actually write a letter to oppose the first one with, some similar concerns, and we were under the understanding that there was a condition on that first addition that there would not be a second story permitted. So this would be the second encroachment that we've incurred. And so I would say in some ways similar to what Jeff mentioned, yes, we absolutely have a concern about the natural light and the visibility to the road, because what you can't see behind kind of that one-story portion of our house is that we just have one window in an already small kitchen. And so that addition would indeed block that window. And I mean, I don't mean to sound facetious, but I mean, anybody's welcome to come in and take a look at exactly what we mean, because, and I know it may sound silly, but we do actually cook, and so it means something to us. The other concern that we have is that if we or a future home buyer were to put up a second-story addition, which would be within setbacks on that corner, that would just be a lot of house in that corner. And so we do worry that that would be a concern potentially of a future home buyer. Same thing with having an already small footprint of a kitchen, and then that kitchen not really having much natural light. And I don't know the answer to this question, but it seems as though there may be some other alternatives, and we just don't know if those have been explored, alternatives that may not impact other neighbors as much as this one would impact us. I don't know, Steve, if there's anything you wanted to add.
No, that covers it all. I mean, I think the other alternative is potentially going back or finishing the basement or something like that, but she covered it all.
Mr. Chairman.
Let me start with first Ms. Freshman, then Ms. Malice, then Mr. Owen. Kind of how I recognize them trying to get in. Questions of the applicant. Go ahead, Ms. Freshman.
Okay, I don't want to redesign, but I do have a question in that there is a larger one-story addition in the back of this house, and I don't know whether the applicants looked at that as an alternative, but would you consider that to be equally offensive when it comes to natural light? It seems as if the angles and the intrusion might be less.
Exactly.
Right, no, we wouldn't be opposed to that.
It'll be for the applicant to address, but thank you.
Ms. Malice?
I just missed what you said about alternatives. One was in the basement, and what was your other alternative?
I think the one that Ms. Freshman was just referring to, which is going up for the addition that's in the back.
So that would be more acceptable to you?
Correct.
And I don't know if the one that has already happened on the side could even be pushed back further.
You mean torn down and rebuilt?
No, just added more depth onto it. So if you look at the
In that
photo,
little notch.
Stand it back, okay.
Mr. Owen.
My question was the same as Ms. Freshman's.
Okay. And I'll just say that even going straight up from what's on the back, they would require a use permit for that too, because you have to have 25 feet on the back, and that's only 22.7 at the
18.5
and 18.5 at the closest. So, all right. Any further questions of the neighbor? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, And let me ask a question, though. How long have you all lived next door?
We bought our house in 2007.
In 7, okay. And Mr. Brunger, can you come forward? How long have you lived at 2633 North Quantico?
1998. I've been in
98?
Arlington.
Okay,
So,
30 years. Thank you. Any further questions of the applicant? Any questions of staff? Not the matters with the board. Ms. Freshman?
Can we get an answer to my hypothetical?
Oh, let's hear your hypothetical again.
Could you come back?
Mr. Brunger, come forward again.
Given your neighbor's concern about light, I was just wondering whether or not you wouldn't necessarily have to do a complete second story, but if the idea is to have playroom, bedroom on the second floor, if you went straight back from the, whatever it is.
I understand what you're saying. Yeah, I can say first of
The dining room wall, not the whole thing necessarily, but.
right. The dining room is actually below the bedroom in the back. So the back addition is off the house, and they built it. And so one thing they did was they had to put in a metal beam, and we put in a high ceiling, and so the structure is created in a certain way to give it a lot of space upward. And so we hadn't thought about ripping that roof off and all the, I don't know, they might be able to address what it would do to the structure, but they built it in a way that this beam and the high ceiling and everything was done as a part of the design. I haven't considered it. I don't personally want to consider it. As far as the sunlight goes, again, the sun does not block off, the sun isn't cut off from the kitchen, if it is cut off at all, until about 1 p.m. from what I could tell. I'm happy to go forward with some kind of temporary framing. We can put it up and watch the sun pass over the frame and we can see, but I took pictures and I watched it and timed it and all of that. And as you look at that over, the picture from above, and the side one with the open, you can see the opening, and the sun actually comes directly from the left side of that opening. And as the sun passes, it doesn't get to the side of it actually doesn't pass the whole house where it's shade in the backyard till 3 p.m. about. So it does get sun up. It's not like a McMansion where the whole house is, completely, it gets no sun at all day long. The sun will continue, and I don't even know if it will block the upper parts of their window when it comes over the addition, because right now, where the house is, it throws the shade on the ground in their yard. Coming out 12 feet or whatever it would be, I don't know if it's going to throw the shade, up higher to their window.
Okay.
But if you want to study, we could do a study. I didn't want to go anywhere else but there.
Mr. Chair.
I think that answered Ms. Freshman's question. Ms. Malice and then Mr. Melnick.
Oh, don't go away. So you were aware of your neighbor's opposition to the first addition that you did?
They put it in writing, and when I went to all my neighbors to get support letters, they didn't sign, of course, and so they prepared a written statement for the assessment, the board.
But for the first one, right?
Right. And for the second one, I didn't know because they hadn't signed, so I wasn't aware that there was still issues.
So you were aware that they opposed the original addition?
Right.
Okay.
And as a part of all opposing, I've tried to, I've looked, I've given, they know I think about it. I always feel bad that if someone isn't pleased by it. But I tried to do like some of meet the conditions of the last one. I took seriously the issue of light and tried to look at that and see whether it would be any worse than the huge houses going up in the neighborhood. And here, at least, the sun still gets through because of the angle of their house and the position of their window where it's at.
Mr. Melnick?
So I don't have a question after all.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, could I just follow up?
Yeah, please follow up.
So, forgot what I was going to say now. Go ahead. I lost.
I'll just say what you're thinking.
Would the overhead shot up?
I lost my train of thought.
Mr. While Ms. Malice tries to regain her idea. Mr. Rissy, I can't tell really from this tax map, but it looks like the neighbors to the right who spoke, 2637, it looks like they're right on, that doesn't look like 8 feet to that property line. Are they closer than 8 feet, do you think? And maybe they can tell. Your neighbors, how close to is your structure to the property line? Because obviously, I mean, that contributed to your concern about the back. Yes. Can you come forward also? Because looking at this picture, it looks like he's 5'8", that his little addition, and it looks like you're under 8 feet. It doesn't look like, because it doesn't look, it looks like there's a little bit more room than you have, like you might be at 7 feet. Do you think that you're kind of close to that property line?
I mean, perception-wise, I would say yes. I would need to take a look at the plat because I know it's marked out on that. But I mean, that's exactly kind of what our concern is, just because since we are on a corner and we're at an angle.
Right.
Exactly.
And that's your kitchen area on the first floor?
So the kitchen.
Kitchen is behind.
Right behind.
Yeah.
So that one little window is right back there.
That's the closest.
It's an office in the front and then a bathroom.
But you don't have a window on that side except that little corner. The looks like there's a corner window as it wraps around in the front.
Right.
Okay. Thank you very much. That was helpful for me at least. Any further questions of the applicant or staff? If not, the matter is with the board.
I know what I was going to say.
Ms. Malice. Yes, you remember.
I remember what I
Okay,
was going to say,
good,
and it was
good.
apropos now. I'm a little reluctant to go forward with this, given that this was a BZA action before, and that neighbor did oppose this before. So, you know, we're asking that neighbor again to forbear their concerns. I'm looking for an alternative that would let us examine this more carefully if other board members are in doubt as to, you know, the way they want to go.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Melnick.
I'm in agreement with Ms. Malice on this. She stated, you know, very eloquently, and you know, it's true. You know, we approved with a condition, and here we are re-examining that condition that was, you know, debated the last one. So, and I've been looking over this, and I know our job is not to redesign, but you know, it doesn't sound like there were any other positions that had really been considered, but I'm in agreement with that I think something else needs to be done to help protect the sunlight issue of the neighbor.
Can we, well,
Just clarify my position. I'm not saying that I wouldn't approve it, but I need more information before I would approve
could we
or
go
disapprove.
and, like I say, go with the idea of seeing what the effect is of the sunlight? They could build a temporary structure of framing, and they can do a study to watch
Let
the
me
sun.
suggest that we have seen three-dimensional renderings on paper that are helpful. And if one could be done that plots the sun over in both seasons, yes, that might be helpful in convincing your neighbor that they won't suffer any detriment with respect to light. Ms. Malice's point, though, goes back to kind of the promise that was made in 2013 when a use permit was granted. It may have been a variance in 2013.
No, it was a use permit.
Use permit was granted, which stated that the structure would not be built over or enlarged.
Can I state something?
Structure. Now, here we are 5 years later when, and you have a right to apply.
Can I say something on that point?
Well,
I was just going to say that.
persuade these
No,
folks.
my point is
I'll give you a little time.
I've looked at all of this, and I've tried to, see. So to me, the way I saw it was, I came in asking for a one-story structure. I didn't come in asking for all 2 stories. And so when the approval was given, they weren't considering 2 stories. It seemed logical that they would say, yes, you only get 1, and of course you have to come back to ask for the 2nd floor, because I never asked for the 2nd floor. You would have to put something in there saying, you know, your variance does not apply to the current.
Ms. Malice's point is that the first in 2013 was granted over the objection of the neighbor, so it was grudgingly granted, if you will. And now it sounds like that she's not willing, and Mr. Melnick is not willing to, over the objection of the neighbor again, grant even more. That which was said in 2013 wouldn't be done. That's all.
No, I understand. As an alternative, it is better than tearing down and building a McMansion. I just kind of would like to stay in this, you know, this house and keep it, you know, looking, you know, beautiful in the way that this house could look.
Understood.
I mean, otherwise, I move, it could be even bigger. But
Understood.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice.
I'd be interested if my colleagues are even interested in a deferral to study sunlight on this property further.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen.
I support a deferral. I think that sunlight is a convenient, for me, a convenient placeholder for what are a package of issues that neighbors often face when there's construction near their property line. That sunlight is the easiest to measure, but there's also, you know, your view shed and, you know, even the way that sound bounces off of a, you know, a brick wall that's 2 stories tall. And so I certainly support a deferral because I think studying alternatives is a good idea. But I wouldn't want to give the impression that once we know where the shadows go, we'll have finished all needed analysis, because I think that the imposition of a 2nd-story addition in this location is more than just literally where the shadows fall. That's just the easiest way to measure it. That's the easiest way to state and measure it. But I think there's more to it than that.
you would be more supportive if I put a huge addition on the back, which is where the sun is coming from, more, you know, because it's coming from the back side. It's not coming from the side up until 1 p.m. So if I put a 2-story on the back, or I can even get a variance to go higher.
Back
right?
is so difficult because you have different roof lines. I'm sure your builder would join me in that observation. It's understandable why you would want to go to the side, because you've got the same roof line and it's much easier from a construction point of view. However, you'd have to come back if you wanted to do something on the back, and it looks like you have a structure on the back that doesn't really lend itself to being doubled up on.
Well,
you don't have
it
floor
all
joists
apart.
across it. You don't have, so it's a different structure. So I mean, the space that you're really seeking is not a lot of space. And I see where you want it, off the 2nd floor upstairs, where it might give your twins a little bit more room to. And you're right. This is not a McMansion. This is not a large home, but neither is your neighbor's. For that matter, and your neighbor on the other side did go back, and I haven't. I guess maybe they'll be here next month trying to do something, but they have a little bit more room. I'm concerned about the distance too between the 2 structures. And
the board approved those.
And
bizarre,
the board
bizarre.
and what was approved said that the structure won't be built over or enlarged. And you have a neighbor to the other side, who are here, and they're kind of close. So
I don't know why they put the houses, this particular one, on the property line, because of the board approved in 1948 and all.
and you came and got an addition. And now I think the discussion is over. Unless anyone has any further questions, I don't think so.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen.
I'm reconsidering my support for a deferral, because we have in the past deferred matters when the applicant isn't really interested in looking at alternatives, and then people spin their wheels and we ruin neighbors' relationships with each other because people aren't sure what they're supposed to do. So I think maybe just a denial would better preserve neighbor relations.
Any further discussion? The matter is with the board now, Mr. Brunger. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, in case V-11410-18-UP-3, I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals deny the requested use permit.
I'll second.
Been moved by Mr. Owen and seconded by Mr. Melnick to deny the subject use permit request. Any further discussion? I would say that, Ms. Malice, I didn't hear a willingness to entertain the idea of a redesign that would be fruitful if we were to defer. So I'm in a position to support the matter that's before us. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to deny the subject use permit signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. And unfortunately, the matter is denied. Thank you all, though, for your efforts. Please call the next case.
Case number V-11411-18-UP-1 is a use permit request by John and Renee Newell, the owners, to permit a rear setback of 8 feet to the wall instead of 10 feet to the wall as required from the rear property line, and a setback of 18 feet to the canopy eave instead of 21 feet as required from the 16th Road North right-of-way, and to permit an aggregate side yard of 18 feet instead of 21 feet as required in the R8 zoning district regarding a 2-story rear addition and new left side canopy on a corner lot in the R8 zoning district, premise known as 1624 North Greenbrier. Staff recommends that the board defer the use permit request to the December 2018 BZA hearing per the applicant's written request.
Thank you very much. Any questions of staff?
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Freshman.
I move the board is...
Hold on just a moment. I want to ask a question. What's the reason for the deferral?
I believe the applicants are looking at redesigning the space.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Now, Ms. Freshman?
Move the Board of Zoning Appeals defer the use permit V-11411-18-UP1 to the November 2018 BZA hearing.
Oh, second.
Second by Mr. Owen.
Mr. Chairman.
November? Sorry, just clarifying. Did you say November or December?
The request was for December.
Well, actually, I read the motion, which says November. If you wish to have it be December, as recommended on page 1, I will change my motion to December.
Thank you very much, Ms. Freshman, because the motion as in the report was described as November. So is it December that they're seeking?
It's now December. And
So
let's...
you've amended that motion, Ms. Freshman?
I have.
For December. And was there a second?
There was, but we need unanimous consent or another amendment.
Let's have that. Is there unanimous consent to allow the amendment to December? And there is. Now, Mr. Owen, your second.
That was it. That was all I was going to talk about.
And, oh, that's it?
Yep.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Oh, actually, I do have one other thing, which is I'm presuming that Martha George is the neighbor on the left side, on the right side property. I couldn't read the address, but if that's the case, then I think we're covered for abutting properties, which is good.
Okay. And I see now Miss Riddle Moser's name is Riddle Moser. For some reason, I was just Moser, because it's Moser and Associates, Moser Architects. Interesting. Okay. All in favor of the motion to defer to December signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. The matter is deferred. Thank you very much. Mr. Owen.
I will not participate in the next item.
Okay. Thank you very much. I will note, though, for the record, too, that matter that we just deferred, we did receive a number of signatures, which will carry over to the December meeting. Please call the next case.
Case number V-11412-18-UP-1 is a use permit request by John and Shelley Nichols, the owners, to permit a front yard setback of 17.9 feet to the porch, 16.9 feet to the porch eave, instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eave, as required from the North Ivy Street right-of-way regarding a new front porch in the R6 zoning district, premise known as 517 North Ivy Street. Staff recommends the board defer the use permit request to the November 2018 BZA hearing per the applicant's written request.
Any questions of staff?
Question?
Ms. Freshman?
This one is November, right? Okay. Apart from that, I'm reading the email from Robert Braddock. It
Yes.
says they want to defer to revise the application for a deeper porch.
Yes.
There's enough time to change the...
The first advertisement for November has run today. There is still sufficient time to advertise this case in a special advertisement.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Ms. Malice.
in case, I'm looking at the proposed motion, and I wonder if that's the right use permit number. Should that
It
be
isn't.
12?
Yes.
Yes.
Newell.
Yep.
Motion?
Any further questions of staff? If not, Ms. Freshman.
I move Board of Zoning Appeals defer use permit V-11412-18-UP1 to the November 2018 BZA hearing.
Second.
Been moved and seconded by Ms. Malice, moved by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice to defer this matter to the November meeting of the BZA. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the ayes have it, and that matter is deferred.
Extension.
Yes, with Mr. Owen having abstained from that vote.
401.
Yes. Please call the next case.
Case number V-11413-18-UP-1 is a use permit request by Harland and Amy Westgate, the owners, to permit a front yard setback of 19 feet to the porch, 18.3 feet to the porch eve instead of 21 feet to the porch, 19.5 feet to the porch eve as required from the 27th Road North right-of-way regarding a new front porch in the R10 zoning district, premise known as 6935 27th Road North. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions. And please note that there is supplemental material for this case that came in after the application packages were printed and distributed. It is an email that came in this evening from the applicant, a letter of support from the neighbor.
At 6931, Dr. Solis and Ms. Ramallo. Any questions of staff? Let me note for the record that Simon Keynes joined us a little while, and his new title is Administrative Services Supervisor. Thank you very much. Any questions? Any other questions of staff? Hearing none. Harland and/or Amy Westgate. Take your time. Welcome. Anything to add?
None. I'm glad that Mr. Reese got my email. That was the only thing I was going to add.
Thank you very much. We have it in front of us. Any questions of the applicant?
Just to review neighbor contact, are we still missing information on a neighbor here on the corner?
On which neighbor?
2743?
Yeah, that there are new occupants in that house that moved in during the pendency of this application. We've not had a chance to talk with them yet. I believe they're renters from the for rent sign that was up before they moved in, and I'm not sure who the owner is.
About next to that.
And the one, 2749, the one next to that?
2749 Wyoming?
Yes.
Is that the one behind us?
It's really
Behind you. It's sort of to your right.
side.
To the right and behind, yes. It's on this picture.
Copy of the map.
It's on this picture on the far left-hand side of the picture.
The far, okay.
It's, yeah, that house.
Yeah, I did not get any feedback from that, from those owners.
Did you go to the door, knock on the door, and seek to talk to someone there?
No.
Okay.
Heard some wayward mail to them once, but that's the extent of my contact with them.
How long have you lived in this house?
3 years, I believe,
Okay.
approximately.
The questions about outreach are persistent. We have encouraged staff to alert applicants to our desire to have applicants to the maximum extent possible contact their neighbors and secure their either approval or disapproval or some indication that they had reviewed the proposed development. In the absence of that, it hinders the decision-making process because one of the criteria is how neighbors are affected. So if there isn't feedback, then it kind of makes it difficult for us to assess. And if there was an outreach, that really says that there may have been a fear of a adverse reaction. And that's the kind of thing that we want to know. If you heard the other case, the neighbors next door, where they said they got along, didn't agree and hadn't historically agreed. That's the kind of thing that is important, as you saw through our decision-making process with that case. So it provides a stumbling block, and in some cases it's an obstacle. I don't know whether it's an obstacle in this case, but it certainly has appeared to be a stumbling block right now.
I certainly agree with that, and as you saw from the previous case, it can be life-altering. But in this particular case, given that it's a front porch, I appreciate the effort you did make, and I think that probably has very minimal impact on the two properties that we've just been discussing.
Thank you, Ms. Freshman.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Melick.
I agree with Ms. Freshman, and I'm prepared to make a motion.
Any further discussion? Anything else? Request of the applicant, hearing none. Mr. Melnick, I'd entertain that.
All right, so in case V 1141318 EP1, I would move that the Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals grant the use permit request with the conditions as stated in the resolution.
Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Melnick and seconded by Ms. Freshman to grant the subject use permit. Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen.
I agree that we have an ongoing concern with trying to communicate our expectations for neighbor feedback, but I also agree with Ms. Freshman that in this particular example, a deferral is not necessary because it's unlikely that the neighbor that was not contacted would feel affected.
Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion to grant the subject use permit signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed? The ayes have it. The matter is granted. Thank you very much. Please call the next case.
Case number V-11414-18-UP-1 as a use permit request by Rob and Lynn Randolph, the owners, to permit a setback of 10 feet to the wall, 9 feet to the eave instead of 25 feet to the wall, 21 feet to the eave is required, and to permit a setback of 10 feet to the porches, 9 feet to the porches' eaves instead of 21 feet to the porches, 19.5 feet to the porches' eaves as required, all from the 6th Street North right-of-way regarding a new two-story single-family dwelling on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district, premise known as 518 North Jefferson Street. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you very much. Are there questions of Mr. Issy? There are none at this time. Let's hear from the applicant, Rob and or Lynn Randolph.
So my name's Robert Randolph. My wife can't be here tonight, but we've lived in the neighborhood for approximately 10 years now, about a block and a half from this location. When it came on the market, we were very excited because it's a wider lot for the Bon Air district that tends to have a 40-foot wide lot. That's what our current house is 40 feet wide. We're excited about this one because it gives us the opportunity to build what could be up to about a 32-foot wide house in the standard R6 zoning. And one of the interesting details of this lot, if you flip back to the prior photo, please, is the actual property line versus where the street is. There's a 7-foot differential there. You can really see it on the back driveway that the property line is an additional 7 feet off. So truly what we're looking for is 17 feet off the street. 7 feet's plenty of distance if there was a sidewalk at some point in the future to be added in. Additionally, off the front of the house is 12 feet from the property line to the street. So we are also not asking for a variance on that part. That is, we're looking for just the standard on there. But it adds an extra additional sight line completion indication that the house is moving away from 6th Street and also away from Jefferson to make the sight lines coming up Jefferson to a stop sign much easier, and the cars that are turning left coming towards the downward have an easier time looking to see if there's any traffic pedestrians. In addition, there is the bump outs at the corner already. Those sit 12 feet off the property line, so you're looking at a house that would be 22 feet away from the street at the corner at the maximum, whatever that is called, the word escapes me right now, from the street there, just to make it even safer.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr.
Owen. There's currently no sidewalk on the 6th Street side of the house, right?
Was that to me or?
Yes.
Yes, you are correct. There is no sidewalk there.
Have you considered whether or not there should be a sidewalk there?
It would, if we put a sidewalk there, it would be a sidewalk that would stop at the property line. There is 7 feet of county land there, so if one goes in there, that's fine with us. There's no issue that we have.
So the county wouldn't even have to get your permission to put a sidewalk in between the curb. You can put a 6-foot sidewalk and still have a foot to spare.
That is correct, sir. And if if you want to make that part of the request that we concede that a sidewalk can go there at any time with our full support, we're happy to do that. We have 2 young children. We're big fans of sidewalks. We would like one put in the entire length of 6th, in fact. That is the right way of doing it. There isn't any other pieces of sidewalk there. The closest one is on 7th. For when we had dogs walking by that house for 5 years, down the middle of the street. So I know personally what it's like to walk down there at night.
And sometimes what helps a sidewalk along is having the missing pieces, right? And then neighbors, not everyone's as good as we are imagining something that isn't there, right? And so people see the concrete and then they see it stop and they say, oh, imagine if that continued on. So you might consider whether or not cooperating with the county to go ahead and build the sidewalk while you have the crews out there maybe might help things along.
That's definitely possible, but there's also a cost constraint on the whole project.
Yeah.
Funds aren't unlimited.
Right.
There's a significant cost.
And even since it's county land, I wonder whether or not there could be cooperation even on cost.
That's a good question. We'd have to, I guess, approach the county and whoever.
Department of Environmental Services might, I don't know whether they do that kind of thing, but they might be able to cooperate with you.
Yeah, if they want to do it at the same time, we'd have.
No, I mean, like, they might.
Or if they wanted to pay to
reimburse you for building the sidewalk.
Oh, yeah, we would be completely open for that.
All right, I don't know, I'm just, that's a wild guess on my part, but it might be at least worth asking the question.
No, absolutely. It's definitely worth it.
Or on your property, it'd be a different set of questions, but.
Right, and that's what, it was kind of funny, actually, one of the neighbors, when I knocked on all of the neighbors' doors to ask about this property, and I actually did it twice. I did one when we first went and approached the county staff for a 12-foot setback off the street and then 6 feet setback off our neighbors on Jefferson. And because, we wanted a little bit of space from the side, thinking that our neighbor directly across 6th Street just had a variance, and that's what they did. We went, well, we'll do the same. We're fine with that. And the staff, suggested, well, why don't you just go to 8 and 10 with the standard R6? And that was after I'd already collected these signatures and went back out, knocked on all the doors just to verify that everyone was fine with the plan and everyone was vehemently in agreement that this house should be done moving backwards from the streets. The other interesting parts were one neighbor vehemently also said that the back tree, the mulberry tree, has got to go. He is just absolutely wanting that thing out of there. Because it is an absolute nightmare of a tree, from what I understand. And I think that's an interesting perspective to have from that gentleman. But he was absolutely positive on us replacing that house with what we were looking to do.
Thank you.
I did also go and gather more signatures that were farther away from the house. All of them are at least a half block to a block away, just to include that there is support in the entire neighborhood to clean this lot up from a house that was built in the 40s.
So it looks like the signatures that are in the packet were collected in August. You have another grouping?
Yes, I have two other groupings.
Happy to include those in the record, too.
I believe those, Mr. Chairman, were presented to us right in advance of the hearing. So we got a supplemental documents right before the hearing started with those additional.
Did I not get one?
I think they were the same.
There may be a,
This was, yeah. Already had them checked off, all these addresses.
Oh, yes, actually, I'm sorry, I do have it. I thought it was attached to the other case. Okay, thank you. All right. Any further questions of the applicant?
Speakers?
There is a speaker, William Barrett, of 5713 6th Street North. Welcome.
Hi, good evening.
You signed up to speak against the proposal.
Yes, and I live about a block away. I bike past this property just about every day on my way to work, to and from. I walk past with my 2-year-old daughter. You know, it's true, of course, not having any sidewalks, that it's really important that cars be able to see around this corner when they're making a turn either off of 6th Street or onto 6th Street from either direction. In the current house, I agree, it needs to go. I'd be very happy to see it replaced with a nice new house. But I agree that their current proposal is better than the current situation, but that doesn't mean that the board is obligated, therefore, to grant them a special exception to the setbacks. I think it would be true that a 10-foot setback would be the smallest or the least of any corner lot in the Bon Air neighborhood, at least among the new construction since 1950. There are, I guess, some older houses that maybe have gotten away with a little bit less. And I think the house at 600 North Jefferson Street, right across the street, is a good comparison where they've managed, I think, with a very similar kind of cutout on the curb. I don't know exactly how the property lines are on their property. They've managed to get, to do a 14.7-foot setback. So, if the applicants, as I mentioned in my letter to you, I have some alternatives, such as if the applicants could make their house a little narrower, if they could, maybe go back to the original plan with the 6-foot setback on the other side and the 12-foot or whatever, that would be an improvement from the current proposal. I'm glad they did manage to go around to the neighbors and get their approval on this plan. That at least sets my mind at ease that there wasn't a kind of a process problem. And as far as the talk of the sidewalk, I think if you're being honest, you have to admit that's 100% theoretical, and in times of tight budget constraints, there's no way of knowing which decade the county will ever get around to that. So I just urge you to consider the safety issue.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions of that speaker?
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen.
I just would like to follow up. First of all, what's your address?
I live 5713 6th Street North, so I'm on the next block down. So my property value isn't about to be affected. I'm concerned just with the safety issue.
Well, I'm sympathetic. As if you were here earlier, you saw me fighting for a street that doesn't exist yet. And I've gone a round or two over 3-foot picket fence that was within the 25-foot corner distance. So my interest is always piqued when someone's talking about road safety. But in visiting the site, I was really having some trouble picturing exactly what the angle is. What's the conflict? Like, which vehicle wears not seeing what other vehicle wear are you concerned about? Because I was having trouble seeing it.
Yeah, so I guess on this, let me see. Okay, so if a vehicle is coming northbound on Jefferson and they were to turn left onto 6th Street, I can't kind of visualize in my head how different it will be from the current situation, but currently with a very small setback, it's difficult for that vehicle to see around the corner if anyone is walking or biking or driving up 6th Street. So you could have someone turning left off of Jefferson onto 6th Street and hit someone who's there. Likewise, you could have someone making a quick turn off of 6th Street, a right turn off of 6th Street onto Jefferson, and if there is a person or bike or whatever coming that way, there could be a conflict.
Well, that's very helpful, Mr. Owen. Can you envision the structure 25 feet from 6th Street? Can you envision that? Because right now it's only 11 feet. So that's half again, it's 2/3 more.
Yes.
It's much further back, which changes that angle drastically, increases the sight line coming down 6 and turning left. It is still an encroachment. That was your concession that you made. It's less of an encroachment. I would submit it's far less, personally.
I think.
But we can't really. Sometimes the designers bring us those kinds of kind of an overlay. If you were to overlay their plan, and that's what I just kind of did in my head, just to see the two plats, to see what that sight line is. And I think by moving the structure back 25 feet, they've taken,
Well, I agree. It's an improvement. I think the one difference, though, is that the proposed house is also very long compared to the current structure. So that kind of weighs in the opposite direction. So it's great to move farther back from Jefferson, but you'll still have this long, house obstructing the view around the corner to a certain extent.
52 feet on the backside. So in terms of the space it's taking up, to get 25 corner lots, to get 25 and 25, it's extremely difficult unless you have a 10,000 square foot plus lot. This is probably right around 6,759 square feet. So fairly typical R6. As Mr. Owen said, he's a stickler for sight lines on corners. And that's an important concern that we all have to have because it is safety, as you've pointed out. I think you're in a slightly better position. Your point is well taken, though, nevertheless. Mr. Owen, were you finished?
I have another question for the applicant, if we're done with the speaker. Yes.
Mr. Randolph, please. Thank you.
So one of the other things that I think Mr. Barrett mentioned in his letter as something to consider is restrictions on or an understanding about what might else be placed in the corner of the property between the house and the corner of the street. And I'm wondering, do you have any particular plans for landscaping or fencing or anything else that would further obstruct in that location?
Nothing that would obstruct, because we have no desire to come back for any type of variance for a fence. So it's basically whatever is applicable by right at that location. I'm unsure if it's a 5-foot fence. I just don't know what the rules are for a corner there.
I think it's a
It's 4 in the front, but you'd even have some vegetation restrictions in terms of what kind of shrubbery you could put on a corner.
And then, within the 25-foot triangle, I think it's 3.
I brought photos of the house currently. I realize how dangerous that is.
I'm persuaded on that point, but I'm wondering about, you're not going to be potentially the only owner of this house ever, right?
True.
And so I'm wondering if you would be willing to agree, just for the sake of clarity, because on the 25-foot triangle restriction, we've had a lot of questions about where that gets measured from, and we've had trouble you don't know about this, but we've had trouble with it in other cases. So
we've had issues, not trouble.
Mercifully, you don't want to.
But I just wanted to float by you whether or not it would be an imposition on you to add a condition that there be no structures, no landscaping or structures taller than 3 feet in between the proposed driveway and the right side property line.
So that would be shorter than a 4-foot fence at that point?
Well, right. It would be shorter than a 4-foot fence. And what I'm saying is at the corner, you already are limited to 3 feet. And the question is, how far back from that corner are you limited to 3 and can go up to 4? And what I'm proposing is a condition that clarifies it's to the driveway and to the front of the house, right, which is 25 feet back.
I get what so that's 3 feet.
So you would agree 3 feet or lower then for that corner of the property?
So I don't know because I haven't thought about it. Hold on a second. So it'd be 3 feet from the driveway to the corner, and then, that I understand. And then from the corner back down 6th Street, It would be to the front of the house.
Just to the front of the house.
And then what's the zoning on that? Just the standard zoning, I'm curious. That the house could it then go up to 6 feet, or is it?
I'll defer to staff on that.
If you are set back 3 feet from the property line, then you can go up to 6 feet.
Okay.
Within 3 feet, it would have to be 4 feet.
And that's the entire length of?
It's all the way back.
Okay.
He's talking about on 6th Street.
Yeah, on 6th Street.
Mr. Owen is suggesting that for not the full 60 feet width of the property, but
No, but from the front of the house to the driveway and the two property lines, that square, nothing over 3 feet.
That's understandable.
25 foot, you're saying 25 feet from the corner.
I would want to measure, for clarity, I would want to measure it from the front of the house and the driveway to make a rectangle from the front of the house, the driveway, and the two property lines.
Technically, it would be a trapezoid because of how the.
Yes, it would be a trapezoid. It would be a quadrilateral of some sort.
So, yeah, you're right. Sorry, that would be right. It's not a trapezoid.
So you could have 8 feet that is on the front. Because the front of the house.
Driveway.
To the left of the house, there's 8 feet.
Well, he would have, be subject to whatever other restriction is there, which I believe is 4 feet in that location.
Right.
But on the,
But 3 feet from the house.
But starting from the front of the house all the way down 6th Street, it would be whatever the normal rules are. And on the far side of the driveway, it would be whatever the normal rules are.
Right.
And I'm saying that instead of arguing in sometime in the future as to exactly where the triangle is, that we just have a condition here that defines the no-go zone as that quadrilateral.
You're going to make some notations?
Well, if the applicant is amenable,
I believe the applicant is amenable to that.
then I'll start drafting something else.
Okay. Mr. Malice,
I'm having trouble with shape other than a triangle. I'm
it
trying
really, he's going along the front with
from
the
here
fence.
to here.
Well, it's a little further. He's saying from the front of the house.
Here's the front of the house. Is that what we're talking about? That looks like a triangle to me.
Yeah, essentially the same thing, yeah.
But why is it not a triangle?
You just have the sight line. He just did a
This is
rectangle.
all,
But they're the same
Why not
points.
do a triangle?
Why isn't it a triangle?
Why shouldn't it be a triangle?
Yeah.
No, it is. It is. You're okay. You both are saying the same thing.
No,
Just
No, we're not.
No, we're not.
Well, yeah, you kinda-
It's
she's not,
Why can't
she's
why
not,
can't the applicant build a giant tree right next to the driveway, right in front of the house? What's wrong with that? That's your question.
Oh, no. Well, there are other regulations that restrict what goes on in the triangle.
And
No, the triangle.
Planting of shrubs.
But outside the triangle would be here.
Right, that's because I would want to measure from the corner of the house. I want to go back farther. I want it deeper than your red line is. Not, I appreciate that there's a sliver of my rectangle right in front of the porch that may be unnecessary, but your red line doesn't go back far enough for me.
I'm trying to visualize how this damages, how this triangle,
Because that triangle is still 2 feet away from the house.
but in terms of sight lines, the sight line from here to the corner and from here to the corner.
yeah, I see what you mean.
Yes.
What did, okay, so you're,
nothing in the front yard can be taller than 3 feet.
That's one way to put it.
It's a narrow lot.
If-
It's constrained already.
yeah, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Malik.
If I could say, I'd, when we're talking about things that are voluntarily consented to, I would go on the, my thoughts briefly, not to interrupt the conversation going on, but there are rules in place, for sightlines, and it's a triangle, and there has been some confusion in the past about where it is, but there, my view is that there are ordinances in the books, about that. And so unless, after full consideration, if the applicant, whatever the applicant is willing to agree to, but I'm in favor, if that's the case, of pressing on the least restrictive. And so I can see more of a triangle if we're going to go that direction. And I frankly think the ordinance is probably sufficient, for sightlines, but those are my thoughts.
I think, I don't think I have the votes I need to do what I want to do. So I'll make a different suggestion.
Let's hear it.
Well, I have to write it down.
Okay.
It's also harder to describe, but, so I'll work on it.
Okay. But Mr. Randolph, it sounds like you are not unwilling, that you would be willing to entertain some additional restrictions with respect to the height of structures in the front and plantings in the front and along the side.
Yes, we're.
Okay. And we'll see what is going to be proposed. Ms. Freshman?
I think we're overcomplicating and overthinking this, because I would say whether it's a picket fence or shrub, it can't be more than 3 feet in the front yard. And if you want to wrap it around, the complete front door, onto the 6th Street side, that's okay too. But rather than, we're dealing with appeals on people who can't interpret what a triangle is on a corner.
Yes,
and I think that's crazy. This is a substandard lot in terms of width, so we're already challenged. They're already challenged, and they're trying to put up a reasonably sized house.
But thankfully,
That's a
he's on the front side
25-foot.
of it. He
That's
has
a
the building,
25-foot
thankfully.
setback. How often do you get that? So
I know, that's remarkable.
I would say 3 feet, just 3 feet. You can see over that on a bike or a car, in a car.
No triangle side?
So 3 feet in the front yard.
I don't know where it's going.
Well,
But just I'm hearing all this
Well, maybe.
geometry, and I'm just saying 3 feet.
Well, let's hear. Maybe. Are you willing to make a motion, Ms. Freshman?
I don't understand her.
Sure.
And let's see. Maybe
Well,
see how it comports with what Mr.
you
Owen
can
is
see
trying
what
to
he's.
come up
All right. First of all,
with.
I'm.
How far along are you, Mr. Owen?
I'm pretty far.
Are you close to?
Should we play the music or something?
Are you close to being at the end? I should have asked.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V-11414-18-UP1, subject to the conditions listed, with an additional condition, number whatever, 5, that says on the front of the house, no fencing or landscaping shall be taller than 3 feet.
Second.
It's been moved by Ms. Freshman and seconded by Mr. Owen to approve the subject use permit with condition and a 5th condition that was just verbally entered into the record, which Mr. Rissy is quickly writing down. And he has. He's indicated that he's got it.
Mr. Chair, could you repeat the condition one more time? The new condition?
Let's have him do it.
Let's have the secretary repeat it.
No fencing or landscaping in the front of the house shall be taller than 3 feet.
Did you get that, Mr. Melnick?
Okay.
Okay.
No, it's not going to. If he said he likes the chain link, and that's not.
No.
Sorry.
He's going to suggest that he be amenable to a chain link fence. That's funny. Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. It's been properly moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none.
I do not understand why it needs to be this restrictive. I would say that this is beyond. Why
Well,
wouldn't?
you can vote against the motion.
But the thing is, I don't disapprove of your project. I just don't.
If the motion fails, we'll have another shot at it.
The applicant has no objection.
At 3 feet, I have no objection to that. It's the front of the
Mr.
house
Chair.
would be fine.
Mr. Melnick.
I agree with Ms. Malice. I think we ought to, if we're going to restrict, we ought to do like the bare minimum restriction. Otherwise, we're just, we're just restricting for something beyond, what our concern is. So.
I hear you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of the motion as with the conditions as added, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
No.
By 3-2, you have it with restrictions. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for your time.
Barton,
And,
Barrett, for coming.
By the way, 6 years ago on our current house, we came before the board for a zoning appeal on 5715 7th Street to have a porch put on, and you called my house ugly before the porch.
What is this?
6 years ago, you approved a porch for our house because we went too far, a different house. And
You're
you
the
should
house
see
that
it.
you live in.
Yeah, you should see it now. It's gorgeous.
Ah.
Good, good. Did you say you had a picture of it now?
I have the
Oh.
picture of the current location.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. Good luck.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Owen.
I just observed that the house across the street that we talked about as a comparable,
Yes.
we talked on that project about the trees and foliage.
Yes.
And whether or not it'd be worth preserving some of it. I don't know if any of you visited and saw what it looks like now, but it looks like a World War I battlefield. You know, it's completely denuded, big giant mud pile where there were, 10 trees on it before, and it's very sad to see.
Wow.
Okay, moving on.
Thank you. Next case.
Case number V-11415-18-UP-2 is a use permit request by Abe Razuk, the owner, to permit a rear setback of 5.4 feet to the garage eave instead of 10 feet as required from the rear property line regarding a new 1.5-story detached garage on a corner lot in the R6 zoning district, premise known as 3900 16th Street South. Staff recommends the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you very much. Any questions about staff? Any questions of staff about this this application? Hearing none, we have one speaker signed up, John Jones.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, Mr.
I would like to point out that there is additional material for this case that came in and after the packets were printed and submitted from the applicant. It is neighbor support.
Yes. And that was included. Thank you.
Hello,
Okay.
I just filled out the form because I did all the drawings on the agent. I put all the.
Oh, you're
stuff
John. You're the agent, John Jones. Thank you very much for filling this out.
in. You're welcome.
Anything to add?
I'm the owner, Abe Razuk.
Or Mr. Razuk.
Yes, I am.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So as you can see from the pictures, just an old garage. It's been there as long as the house has. It's structurally unsound at this point. We're not looking for any closer to the neighbors that it has been for the last 50, 60 years. We just want to rebuild it into a modern structure, single car garage, and we're going to extend it into our property line, leaving the side closest to our neighbors intact, and that's what we're trying to do. Like Ms. Reese had already mentioned, we have signatures from all the abutting properties, the only exception being the one that's on the opposite side of the street from where you're looking at on this picture. That's actually a vacant house as it stands now, and then the property directly across 16th Street from us just wasn't available at the time, but we had all the other.
I'm sorry, let me interrupt. The house to, that would be to the east, that across the street is vacant, and then directly across
From the
16th
front.
Street
Yep,
is
from the front
vacant
of the house.
also?
No, they're actually there. They just weren't available for signature.
Thank you very much.
Yep. Beyond that, any questions that you may have of me?
No questions of the applicant or his...
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Owen.
I had a question for staff. I was confused about a little bit confused about the existing condition and the proposed condition as to whether or not we were 5.4 or 6.4 feet. My understanding, I think, is that the current wall is 6.4 feet away, and the proposed wall is 6.4 feet away.
Correct.
And the eaves are proposed to be a foot further out.
Correct.
And the current eaves are some additional distance further out that may also be a foot. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. So, so the request is for 5.4 feet to the eave.
Correct.
And 6.4 feet to the wall.
Correct.
Okay.
Any further questions of staff or the applicant? And if not, be happy to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution Approving the use permit V-11415-18-UP2, subject to conditions.
Thank you. It's been moved by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Malice. Any further discussion to approve the subject? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it.
Thanks, sir.
What is your rank?
CW4, Chief Warrant 4.
Okay. I couldn't tell. I was trying to determine what it was.
The dots, yeah.
Thank you very much. I thought there were 4 stars for a second.
I wish. Well,
And I would have addressed you as general had they been. Thank you. Good luck. Please call the next case.
Case number V-11416-18-VA-2 is a variance request by BZA Homes LLC, the owner, to establish a one-family dwelling on a lot that does not meet the width or area requirements for a one-family dwelling in the RA 818 zoning district, and to permit a second-story addition to a non-conforming structure, and to permit interior alterations of a non-conforming structure, and a rear setback of 17.1 feet to the roof instead of 25 feet as required from the rear property line, regarding the conversion and renovation of a structure for use as one-family dwelling in the RA 818 zoning district, premise known as 2118 North Cameron Street. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached resolution granting the variance with conditions.
Thank you very much. Any questions of staff?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Owen.
So part of our, part of the request is to do interior alterations on this site. Am I correct in understanding that the county board may, in a week or two, amend the ordinance so that such permission would no longer be required?
Again, I can't speak to what the county board will do in a week or two, but my understanding is that the changes that are coming would not affect this site, as changes are not being proposed to the RA zoning district at this time.
Oh, I thought the interior alterations included the RA zones.
I could be wrong in that.
Okay. All right. Well, anyway, that's just a, we can move on.
Okay. Well, interesting. We have, I presume there's a representative from Zalea Homes here. I don't have a speaker slip, though, for anyone. Did you plan to speak and represent Zalea Homes?
I did. I'm sorry. I didn't. I was not aware I needed to fill
Would
it out.
you?
I can.
You
Yes.
can fill one out afterwards. Are you?
Ask the staff a question.
Are you Johnny Zalea?
Yeah.
Okay, please fill out a slip, and we do have a question of staff, though. Ms. Malice?
So Mr. Owen raised a question regarding whether a single-family use is permitted in this district, given that the lot is undersized. So it's an interpretation of the zoning ordinance.
So the use is allowed in this zoning district. It is a matter of size. They aren't allowed by right because the lot is undersized, hence the need for the variance. The variance would be to permit this use, which is allowed in the zoning district, on a lot that is smaller than is required for the use in the zoning district.
Well, I guess, Mr. Chairman, if to follow up on that question, I guess the question is, so I think Ms. Malice, following up on a question that I had posed, is there's a zoning ordinance, there's a state statute requirement that we cannot grant a variance to allow a use that would not otherwise be allowed. And so my question, upon which Ms. Malice's question was based on, is what does it mean for a use not to be allowed? And so one way of thinking about that is if the use is allowed in the zoning category somewhere, somehow, then it qualifies. But another way of interpreting it is the zoning use allowed on this parcel some way, somehow, without a variance? And so the question is, which of those two possible interpretations is staff using?
Well, I would say, I guess we're using the first. We're going, I think, off of the definition of a variance, which means the application of the zoning ordinance a reasonable deviation from the provisions regulating the shape or, in this instance, size or area of a lot or parcel for a building or structure when the strict application of the ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. So I would say this is for the allowance of flexibility for the size requirement for this allowed use.
Thank you. And I don't know if that answers Ms. Malice's question.
Yeah, I just don't know that.
I would say we've had a number of other variance requests, even relatively recently, to establish houses on
undersized lots.
Sure. And this is in that same vein.
But in those cases,
Okay. So in this case, we have someone who wants to put a one-family home on a undersized lot in the RA 18 zoning district. Because there's a structure there already, they need a variance to do something, to put any other structure there. Because the lot's undersized.
I think what piqued my interest.
What's there? They're not building something new.
Yeah, I think what piqued my interest is that there's already a use.
Yeah.
And they're proposing to change the use. And so that got me wondering about if they're changing the use, does that comport with
Well, it's a
our
permitted
requirement?
use that they're changing it to.
Well, that's the question, is it permitted?
A single-family home is a permitted use in this zoning district.
That's one way of looking at the rule, right? But another way of looking at the rule is it a permitted, it's because the state statute doesn't say permitted use, I think, in the zoning district. Maybe it does. Maybe we should look at the statute. Basically, I'm leaning towards staff's interpretation, but to me it seemed like a not absolutely clear question.
The odd thing to me is that they're not seeking to expand beyond and make an addition that's greater than 50% of the size. That's usually what we face with these substandard lots and variance requests. So to see something, it's going to be, the proposal is to turn it into a home, and it's currently a church.
Yes, that's correct.
so, Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice.
So this variance request would establish the use on this site as a single-family home.
Among other things.
Other things, but by approving the variance, we are affirming that this is now a single-family home use appropriate in this district.
Yep.
And that
And you
from
got one
that
next door, too.
And from that step, then other use permits, other requests could follow.
Well, in this situation, use permits could not follow from this, as the use permits aren't allowed in the zoning district, hence the long list of items on the variance request. And I don't think that it would be such that you would see other applications following this, because, again, I think staff's position that this is an allowed use in this zoning district.
So why wouldn't other things follow?
Well, you don't really have any other churches that might want to convert to a house. It looks like in this,
Once it's established as a single-family home, can he come in and put on a second story? All the by right.
Well, they are actually, with this application, requesting the second story. And anything that they do, again, has to be a variance as opposed to a use permit.
They don't get you, because of the zoning district.
Because of the zoning district.
Any use permits here?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Owen.
The statute reads as follows, with respect to this provision that we've been debating, the granting of the variance does not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on such property or a change in the zoning classification of the property. And so it doesn't say otherwise permitted in the zoning category, right? And so that was what made me ask the question. Is it could have been phrased as in that zoning category.
But saying on that property, thankfully the property is already zoned in such a manner that allows for a single family.
Well, literally it doesn't, right? Or they wouldn't be here.
Well, no, the property does, except that it's substandard in size.
Right. And
so
I agree. But I think there's just there's two plausible interpretations is where I'm at.
So your point would be that because it's substandard in size, it's not, it doesn't allow for that use.
Correct.
I got you. Except for that use is permitted on substandard lots if they get a variance.
But we're making.
Or if the structure was built before the advent of the zoning ordinance.
Well, even a non-conforming use would be permitted
Anything
that
to
way.
change it would require a
Right.
variance. And that's really the point, that this is a non-conforming, it's a 1950 it was built.
Right.
So it's.
I mean, where it boils down to me is that I have trouble thinking that the state legislature meant. I think the state legislature meant how staff is interpreting it, and I think the state legislature probably wasn't imagining the more restrictive but plausible alternative interpretation that I was wondering about.
Right. But I mean, it was kind of like a bar review question, kind of analysis that we kind of went through.
Yep.
Okay. Any further questions? The matters with the board?
Sorry, there's only three of us.
That's a surround. That's outnumbered and surrounded.
I was confused about the neighbor outreach. I think some of the address points were mislisted.
Yeah, let's hear from the applicant with respect to that. He's heard us talk about our desire to have that.
Copy of the tax map on the PowerPoint that we could look at?
There's not.
Or what about that overlay? Do you have an overlay, back to that overlay? That aerial?
The bird's eye is, that's the extent of it.
So there was, your application says you visited someone at 2115 North Cameron Street.
Yes.
I don't know where that is.
Yeah. Well, good evening.
Yes, sorry.
For the last case here. Actually, yes, that was a mistake. It's the property next to 2117 Cameron, which is 4830. And for somehow, some way, that address got completely butchered. So
did you visit?
So, let me just clarify this. That's a little house on the corner that faces 22nd Street North.
Right, that's the one on that photo. That is that corner house across the street with the telephone pole in front of it. That one there.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
I think the following, it was really late that evening and dark and raining, so I guess it was 2117, 2115 was the assumption. So it's incorrect on that. So it should have been 4830.
So did you speak to them?
I did not. There's nobody there, either at 2113 or 2114.
And what about the rear neighbor at 2117 North Dinwiddie Street?
Yes, I did have a lengthy conversation with the owner of that particular property, actually. Very interesting. They had just completed or almost in the process of completing a really large-scale renovation addition on their house as well, on 2117 Dinwiddie.
Do you have anything from them? Did they sign anything?
I know. I did leave a form for them, and they said they would review. I did not hear anything in response.
Mr. Chair, do we have any speakers for this case?
Yes, we do.
That might clarify this line of questioning.
I see. Okay. Because there was someone listed as 2117 22nd Street, but that seemed like it might have been another error.
Yeah, that was, again, my apologies for the typo there. It's 2113 that the attempt was made, essentially right after the discussion with 2117.
Okay.
Well, but there is feedback from 2117, one of the apartments.
Correct.
Dinwiddie,
Yep, and this was on Dinwiddie.
Cameron.
Right. So on Cameron, there is a response, and 2117 is the rear neighbor.
Right.
Who I had the lengthy conversation with, and 2113 Dinwiddie are folks who were not home that day.
Okay. And what about 2122
Also,
Cameron Street, which is the immediate abutting townhouse to your right side property line?
there's also no response on that. We had success on the other 2 or 3 on that building, but not the one on the end there.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let's hear from your neighbor to the rear, Mr. Robchek. And I hope you'll help me pronounce that correctly, your last name. Robachek.
I'd be happy to. Herbovchak.
Herbovchek.
Herbovchak, yes. Slovak.
Usually the H is silent, but in this case not.
Not, yes. There's other silent letters in there.
I had a drafting teacher 50 years ago named Rabowski, and it was HR.
We might be related.
Michigan. Okay, Mr. John Rabowchek of 2117 North Dinwiddie, welcome. You have signed up to speak against this proposal.
Thank you, yes. So I just want to say thank you. I live at 2117 North Dinwiddie, I think as we've mentioned, right behind this property. I think as many of you have mentioned and understood, this is a particularly challenged property in many different ways. So what I would just broadly say before starting in is we are supportive of a single-family home going in on this property with caveats about how it is done, given the uniqueness of the property. I will say that unfortunately I was unable to provide materials prior to this meeting. And that is mainly because since last Friday, I have been speaking with all the neighbors around the neighborhood to get a sense of whether or not they support. I've unfortunately heard from all but one of them, and that would be 2113, that none of them were aware that this proposal was out there and that this construction project had been proposed. So what I had done is just simply printed off the request as well as the staff comments and had been speaking with all my neighbors around the neighborhood to see kind of what they feel, if they're supportive, to voice their support. Provided Jay's contact information. I also provided the information for this meeting, should they want to attend this meeting. Many of the neighbors around that area are elderly, and so if they had any concerns and were not able to attend the meeting, I simply took the approval letter and made it a letter of concern. I have attached that from 4 of the neighbors, 3 of them abutting this property, to a proposal here. This is a letter that I've written that includes a list of the individuals I've spoken with, whether or not they were supportive or not, if I was able to contact them, as well as a copy of those people who have concerns about the existing redevelopment property. Mr. Reese, I'm more than happy to give you the original, and if anyone up front would like a copy,
Like those, yeah.
I'm more than happy to.
And did you provide those to the applicant?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
But I'm more than happy
Make
to.
sure, yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'll take it and we can circulate it. It doesn't matter. I'll take you to the way.
So what I would just probably say in terms of brevity, or that obviously, given the uniqueness of the property, there is an existing setback of 17 feet to the rear property line. That's a function of a variance that was done after the church was built a number of years ago, after 1950, to meet the needs of the church. The new proposal requests the variance to build off the existing structure from 17 feet. Given the small parcel of land that we have both back behind the church as well as the parcel of land within the church, I have significant concerns about a second story in terms of both privacy and noise. Both our lot and the lot, the proposed construction, not only would there be a minimal break kind of between those yards, but also between the houses, you would have both master bedrooms in the back as well as living rooms and dining or kitchens. So noisy areas and quiet areas, both very closely aligned. I'm unfortunately not a planner or do not have great skills in terms of drawing things out, but to kind of better highlight this, I was able to take the map from the proposal and try to draw a line that was, as best I could, from the back of that property parallel to the line on Cameron Street as well as Dinwiddie Street to highlight the difference in terms of what that spread would be between the backs of those houses. That is by far the smallest spread for anywhere on that street, as well as many other parcels in that neighborhood. So I have significant concerns about that. I would say the other issue with this is because it's such a small parcel of land, the current design allows for minimal green space and little to no backyard. That's a 22nd Street right at the intersection off Lee Highway is a busy area. For a single-family home with children, many folks would be looking for a safe place for their kids to play in their backyard. This does not lend itself to that, the current proposed plans, I would suggest, from other families I've spoken with. What I would say is given the size of the new proposed structure, it's a 4/5 bedroom or 4 bedroom plus a den and 3 baths. I have concerns that not only would it not maybe be a single family home, but it would potentially turn into a rental unit of 4 to 5 units. I know in the variance I read that there was a letter of trying to support the conversion from a church to a single family house would reduce the need for parking on the street. Just given the history of the church, if anybody knows, back in 1950, this area of land was actually walled off from Arlington, which I'm sure you all know by now. This church was actually built by, not myself, but my neighbor's Nana, who actually lives right next to me. Her and a number of other residents actually hand-built this church out of brick. And so this was built to serve the neighborhood. Anyone who attended this church used to walk to it. So there was never any concern with traffic or parking. So my concern would be, given the proposed structure, the lack of any kind of kid-friendly space, lack of green space, that it's going to turn into a rental unit, which will again further enhance those concerns about both noise and privacy. Those concerns were also reiterated through the kind of voices of concern or the letters of concern from my neighbors. Other than that, I noted within my memo that and I apologize, I hadn't realized that those were errors in the letters of support. They looked like they came from renters when I looked at the property map. So I had mentioned that it looked like they had all come from renters. I will validate that all mine came from long-term homeowners that have been around that neighborhood over 50 years.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions of the speaker?
I gather I gather you're going to pursue other contacts or?
Yes, I'm more than happy to. I'm not against a single-family home, but I would like the builder to potentially work with the community and make sure there's something that works. I will say 2110 is a reasonable comp. That is the building that, if you happen to be looking at the screen from my angle to the left of it, is a slightly similarly kind of challenged lot in terms of land. It has a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, about little over 2,000 square feet. The neighbors generally seem happy with that type of construction. That, like many of the other houses on that street, do have a variance to be closer to the street to allow a larger setback from the backyard for kids to play, some noise and privacy between neighbors.
So 2110 has a very big backyard, right?
It should be two to the left, so it's not very big. It's actually...
Are we talking Cameron, 2110?
Let me double check.
Yes.
So 2018.
Very big, much bigger backyard than the property that we're talking about.
Yes, but that backyard would be more in line with what as I'm looking at, I guess to the extent that I can, looking at the map here, more similar size to other properties around it.
I'm sorry, because it just, 2118, which is the subject property, looks like it's got about a third of the backyard of 2110.
That's right, and the difference there is simply that 2118 is a larger floor plan and also has the additional extension that was granted by
Right.
BZA for the single-story addition to the church.
So to get the kind of setback that 2110 has, rear yard setback, you'd have to tear the structure down.
You could either tear it down, or you could keep, if nothing else, maintain the 25-foot setback and move it forward a little bit. So you could maintain the existing structure and add on, although obviously that would come from the front rather than the back. The only difference, again, being that would be more in line with the homes that are.
Yeah, moving it forward.
You mean that hand-built brick church?
Yes.
Forward? That's what you said?
Yes. Well, not move the church, but.
You didn't have any experience in construction, though.
That's what you're suggesting, is that we move that building forward? Or are you saying that he tear the back down and build in front?
If the intention is to build a larger house, then my hope would be to provide more yardage, particularly in the back, to incentivize a single family to live there for a long period of time. That's what we would want as homeowners in the back, as opposed to the current proposal, which would, I think, incentivize more short-term renters, which would put a kind of what I would say is a bit of a challenge to the community on that side. We've had a challenge with that on 2102 on Dinwiddie, which put a 6-bedroom house in there that has been full of renters. But I would simply say, I think the community would be happy to work with the builder.
Can you tell me about, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, can you tell me, so you're at 2117 Dinwiddie, is that right?
That is correct.
And tell me about the house at 2113 Dinwiddie. Have you mentioned that, your next door neighbor? Because you're facing your house to the right? So that footprint and placement looks a little closer to what's being proposed by the applicant. And so what's the dynamic on that property? So it's in this photo, it's the one with the sort of tan roof.
I see it. So the dynamic is that was built many, many years ago after it was, that's a family home from the Browns. They've owned many different, they've probably owned 7 or 8 different properties on that block for the family, and that's where they currently reside now.
Are there any negative impacts of the placement there that you've observed living next to them?
No, but it's mainly been offset by the fact that 2114 is a very small house on a kind of larger lot. So there tends to be more open space.
So there's the appearance of a larger backyard because the neighbor behind them has a huge backyard.
Exactly. So that's kind of why I did this for my own sake, to say, am I being unreasonable by saying this feels awfully tight? If I look at the difference between the backs of these buildings and the yards, it's because sometimes some are offset further towards the street.
15 is impermissibly close to the street. Anything, they would need a variance for anything that they would, or special use permit, because they're probably only 15 feet. I don't know what the numbers are, but.
They're less than that. I went down the neighborhood and actually used my little.
14 feet, 13 feet, something like that?
7 feet from the front stoop, 14 feet to the house.
Stoop, you said.
To the front porch.
Another step?
Yeah.
Yeah. Ms. Freshman.
I'm not finding the application unacceptable, but as we look at the tax map and we are debating which house is close to the street, which house has a bigger backyard or whatever, if you look at just at what we can see on this tax map, this is a completely mixed bag place. And there are houses that have been upgraded and expanded and second stories put on. And so whatever your point of view, you can find something on this map to either argue with or support.
Okay,
so I don't think there's any norm. Right. And to that extent, I'm persuaded that this is an acceptable application.
Any other questions of this speaker? Thank you very much. Appreciate your input and your efforts going around. I gave you more than 2 minutes because you presented like a civic association president.
I did.
Thank you for your outreach, though.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And having said that, any questions or any efforts that you'd like to have Mr. Zalea clarify?
Mr. Chairman, not necessarily for Mr. Zalea, but just to throw out sort of where I'm at on this. I do think that it's appropriate to grant a variance to make this a buildable lot for a single-family home. So that's point A, right? And then the question is, once you're allowing a single-family home, then what are the expectations for the single-family home? And if it's possible to build according to all the normal setbacks, if it's possible to build a reasonable home with the coverage and so forth, then that's usually desirable as well. And if this were an empty lot, then, I think it would be hard to make the case with the placement and location of this lot to do anything other than ask for the normal setbacks. But it's not. There is something built there. And so now the question is, how much additional latitude should there be to not meet standard setbacks because you're allowing someone to take advantage of an existing structure? And I think, we're commanded by the statute to consider existing structures. That's part of what our consideration is. So that's also reasonable. So I think we're on the right track, but I am concerned that it feels to me like with a little bit more conversation with the neighbors, there might be some inspiration about making this gaining further compatibility with the neighborhood on this very difficult, highly constrained site that's in an RA zone next to a townhouse, two houses down from an apartment building, across the street from a parking lot. I mean, as Ms. Freshman pointed out, there's no standard for this neighborhood. And I just really feel like, while on the one hand, I don't think the applicant is very far away from reasonable, may already be very much in the zone. It just seems to me like we would learn some things about how to further avoid injury to the neighborhood if there was better conversations. So that's sort of my attitude.
Thank you, Mr. Owen. Ms. Freshman.
Well, I would just add to my comments that it's not just an existing structure, it's an existing structure on a lot that is smaller and narrower. So if you don't buy into the conversion, then you have to start over completely. I don't think talking to all the neighbors is really going to make much difference to addressing the existing conditions.
Mr. Chairman?
Ms. Malice. Thank you, Ms. Freshman.
So the question in my mind is the second story. Obviously, this could be a single-family home with that's one story. And it's the second story that I think begins to concern the rear neighbor. And obviously, that second story doesn't have to go all the way back in order to make this property usable. And so that's an area where there's possibly compromise. I don't know if your neighbors are interested in what kind of a compromise, but I'm persuaded that that's something to explore. Is not building a second story all the way back within the realm of possibility for you?
Not at this time, because the plan has been to get an approval, having it be within the zoning code possible to have a single family, and within the area that we have to add that second story. We did accommodate for no eaves, nothing overhanging into, so it's just, if you look through the pack here, you'll see a couple renderings of what the house would be. So there's nothing, so we're not adding anything forward or backwards or sideways. It's only up because the house is quite small already, and so we won't be able to get the bedroom count that's necessary for us.
Thank you. And I'm kind of looking at it, and I'm going to go with Mr. Owen and Ms. Freshman. I'm kind of looking at it like, it's 27 feet that you're looking for in height. That's not really tall. And you've got a 3-story or apartment building across the street, and then I think a four-story one right behind that. That structure at the end looks like it's 3 stories, even though that's, they'll probably call that, that's 3 stories next door. So I'm not really, and then, the neighbor who at the rear on Dinwiddie, he's got 2 stories and then some. That's not, almost a walkout. You can walk out of your basement in the back, can't you? No, you can't? Okay. But it's not too much taller than the house next door to 2117 Dinwiddie. So I'm not upset by the height. You got the walls. You're dealing with the 4 walls. You're staying within them. It's an odd structure. God bless you for wanting to do something with the church. Mr. Owen and then Ms. Freshman.
Yeah, I think I'm hearing my colleagues on the structure. I guess what I'm saying is that we're also, another element of the variance consideration is that we not be injurious to the neighbors, right? And oftentimes, once we hear neighbor concerns and they've been discussed with an applicant, we talk about mitigation. We talk about screening, we talk about where window placement goes. And I've heard, even before I was on the BZA, you guys have had discussions with people about, well, don't put the bathroom window there. None of those discussions appear to have occurred here. And I feel like that's not as big a deal as moving the back wall and its foundation or moving the front wall and its foundation. I mean, I agree that's a big deal, and maybe that's not reasonable under these conditions, but we haven't even started to talk about mitigation. And that seems like an easy win.
Well, yeah, and I guess Ms. Freshman.
Okay.
I guess my view is that the neighbor to the rear, his efforts should have stimulated some more pushback if it existed, given the historic nature of the structure too, that it was built by folk who still reside, or relatives of folk who still reside in the neighborhood, that if there was pushback, they would be here. And we've seen folks from this neighborhood come and push back. Remember when we had that extremely narrow lot that for, I don't know, I can't tell, many years it was, it sat and then overgrew. And you remember how there was so much contention, buttons.
No,
not next to
north
the
of
bakery.
Lee Highway.
That one too, though.
That one too.
So I always like to hear from neighbors, especially when there's something significant, but given the outrage that the neighbor did, that would have stimulated something. And the prevalence of so many apartments in the area too, that kind of inhibits input, because folk in apartments, we just know they're not, it's not like they're condos or townhomes. You get a little bit more out of those, but rental units. And we really can't speak to how a property owner uses their property. They can, if they want to rent the property out, that's to their liking. There are restrictions on, with respect to how many how many rooms can be let and all of that, but that deals with another area. I too am persuaded that this is a good use for the property, and it's and that this is not an unreasonable plan. Ms. Malice?
I'm going to support a deferral. I'm not entirely comfortable of who's been contacted by whom, and what they think. And certainly if the Civic Association hasn't been contacted, and I think that would be helpful as well.
And let me ask, Mr. Rissy, are there notices sent to civic associations?
No.
Okay. That has to resume. If nothing more than just the agenda, the docket, the posting, that should be sent to each civic association.
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Melnick.
So I'm in agreement with you, Mr. Chair, and Ms. Freshman on this. There's a lot of different viewpoints here, but I agree with you in particular that we'd be seeing more pushback if there was, and that's I think that seems pretty clear. So I do think it's reasonable. The staff, of course, is recommending granting this. So I would vote for it if there's such a motion.
I'd be happy to accept a motion if anyone's willing to make one. Any further discussion, though? Any further questions of the applicant? Ms. Freshman?
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the variance V-11416-18-VA2 with the attached conditions.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Been moved by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Mr. Melnick to adopt the attached resolution granting the variance. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
No.
And by 3-2, you got it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone. And thank you for your outreach to your neighbor. Absolutely. Yep. Stay in touch. Stay in touch with the builder, because you still have, you can still police the building operation too and make sure that they're good, that Mr. Zalea's a good corporate citizen. Ms. Freshman?
I move approval of the minutes of September 22nd, 2018.
Is there a second?
Are these revised? Do we get revised minutes?
They are revised based on recommendations I gave from you. We accepted almost all of them.
Almost.
Yes, there is some proposed verbiage in, I believe, the first case that we did not fully accept in the case with Mr. Gilbert.
Which case was that?
V-11397-18-APP-1. I'll just go ahead and read it for the record if
Yep.
you would.
Did you pass out revised minutes at the beginning of the meeting? Did I miss a?
They were submitted with the packet.
Okay.
I'll just read the whole thing.
Right. Got it.
V-11397. Oh,
Do you have any questions, Mr. Zalea? I was just sitting here to say thank you for one and for going through with it with us, because it is quite a challenge.
Okay.
And I know that the biggest concern is the rental issue, but it won't be an issue here, which I will confirm with him. Because right across the street, the builder built a big house and he's renting it room by room, which is one of his biggest concerns. And so that won't happen here, so I'll reiterate that to him.
That's great. Thank you for getting that out.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Good luck. Thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mr. Ritchie.
V-11397-18-APP-1, appeal of Daniel D. Gilbert, the owner, of a violation notice issued for violating section 12.9.2 of the zoning ordinance regarding the existence of an accessory dwelling unit on the subject premise on a corner lot in the R5 zoning district, premise known as 734 21st Street South, or Highlands. After duly advertised hearing in which public testimony was provided by Philip Dales, the appellant's agent, who requested the matter be deferred to seek possible resolution of the appeal with staff. And there being no other speakers to this case, Ms. Malice made a motion to defer the application to the November 2018 BZA hearing per the applicant's request. The motion was seconded by Ms. Freshman and passed after a vote of 5-0.
So you would just put a comma where that period is.
There's a typo.
After staff, yeah. Or eliminate it altogether.
I believe that your correction had a alternate sentence following.
I can pull it up.
Did I say there was a different reason for the deferral?
Yeah, it was.
Fine. I don't object to that.
Okay.
Work out disagreement with staff or something.
Any other
Did Ms. Freshman's motion get seconded?
changes based on that weren't any recommended changes that weren't accepted by Mr. Owen?
I think that might be the only one.
Mr. Chairman, was the motion seconded?
No.
I'll second the motion.
Thank you very much. Moved by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Mr. Owen after clarifying the suggestions that he made. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Owen.
I just wanted to briefly report that I met with the zoning administrator and Mr. Rissy last week to talk about bylaws, and we didn't get to procedures. I think we focused on bylaws for that whole meeting. And so we've given each other assignments for further research, and we're apace, and we'll check in again in a month.
Okay.
But we're still working on it.
That means we're going to have a resolution, we're going to have something to vote on before the end of my term, right?
March? Yes, I think so.
Okay, good.
Is that your term as chair or your term on?
Yeah, I'm gonna pack it all in.
You're giving it all up.
I think so. I think so. I think it's been. I think 2019 will be 20 years, and I think that's a significant contribution. I enjoy it though. I especially enjoy the issues. It's funny. But
Chairman, also, I believe we lost, I believe we were overruled.
Yes,
Our
thank you
final
for sending
overrule
that out.
on
CVS,
the
the
CVS.
Highlander Motel.
Yeah, the zoning administrator and we were in agreement, and none of the circuit courts or the Supreme Court were in agreement with that.
Twice. They took it up there twice. Oh, my gosh. I hope everyone read that article. That poor fellow. He feels really...
He's going to sue everybody.
I mean, twice the county, I don't know what they did twice in term, but oh, my God, he feels...
He's pissed.
Yeah, he's pissed. He
There
didn't
was an
name the
article?
BZA as though he was going to seek...
No.
Well, we have sovereign immunity anyway.
Yeah, I know, but...
So does the county, right?
Well,
Yeah.
it depends. It depends.
If someone was ultra-virus, maybe not.
Yeah, but they weren't. I don't, you can...
Move to adjourn.
Okay, it's been moved by Mr. Owen, seconded by Ms. Freshman to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and we are adjourned. Thank you very much.